Hello friends and welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here and today I have brought you a very important video in which we will be primarily discussing about the Constitution. We will also be seeing the four fundamental pillars of the Constitution, that is preamble, fundamental rights, fundamental duties and directive principle of the state policy. By understanding all these things, we will finally be solving a prelims question. Okay, this is a two-part video. This is the part first of the video. We'll deal with things one by one so that this video can help us achieve an objective of understanding the chief purpose of the Constitution. Alright, so let's move forward and come to the question. So which one of the following statement best reflects the chief purpose of the Constitution of a country? Please notice the language that has been used. It's asking the chief purpose of Constitution of India? No, it's asking the chief purpose of Constitution of any country. Alright, so we can see two type of countries where the government is constitutional, let's say. The government is non-constitutional or dictatorship exists. Alright, so in view of that we can solve the question very easily. However, it becomes very important for us to judge all the aspects before solving a question and see what knowledge we can derive out of the question. So let's understand these things one by one. This question we'll solve next after this the current question. Okay, let's come to the Constitution. There are four fundamental pillars to the Constitution. The first is preamble. The second is fundamental rights. The third is fundamental duties. And the fourth is directive principle of the state policy. The preamble tells us the introduction to the Constitution. The fundamental rights tell us what rights do people have, the citizen or the foreigners in India have. What is their nature, when they can be snatched, and how they can be snatched. So upon how, we have already discussed a question with due process of law. So in this video, we'll be talking about the FR only, not the how. Okay, the fourth pillar is the DPSP. So these give a basic introduction to the Indian Constitution, in light of which we'll be solving the question. Let's start with the preamble. The preamble reads, "We the people of India." Just a second. "Having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constitution Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution." This is the preamble. There is a method to correctly read it as well as comprehend it. I have hence created a mind map which will guide you towards that process. Okay, let's see this one by one. So the preamble of Constitution serves as an introductory statement that elucidates the document's underlying philosophy and goals. It provides insight into the intent of its framers, the historical context of its creation, and the fundamental values and principles that the nation upholds. In the case of the Indian Constitution, the preamble declares this we have already seen, signifying that the source of authority for constitution resides with the Indian populace. While the preamble's content is not legally enforceable in the court, it outlines the Constitution's objectives and serves as a guiding aid when interpreting ambiguous language within the Constitution's articles. That means it might not be justiciable itself, but it is all the source and the base of all the interpretation that forms the justice. Alright, so it is not directly justiciable, but indirectly it is the base of the justice that India allows. It gives us the substantive due process of law, not the procedural. Alright, so key elements expressed in the preamble include the nature of the Indian state, sovereign, socialistic, democratic, and republic, the statement of its objectives, and the date of its adoption. Let us now learn the preamble in a very lucid manner. So it says, we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to three things. The first thing is to constitute India. Second, to secure to all its citizens. Third, to promote among them all. Alright, let's move forward. So constitute India into what? 5 things. The first is into a sovereign. Sovereignty means that there is no higher power ruling this. We are the highest power ruling ourselves. Socialist, that means a welfare state. Secular, that means which respects or treats all religions equally. Democratic, that means governed by the public indirectly, as well as a republic. The republic's definition is that means it has no hereditary or inheritary king. Alright, so these are the 5 things that we pledge to constitute India into. Now let's see to secure to all its citizens. 3 things. The first is justice. Second is equality. Third is liberty. Okay. So the justice of 3 types, which is social, economic, and political. The equality of 2 things, status and opportunity. And the liberty of how many things? 5 things: thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. And to promote among them all further what? Fraternity, which will lead to 2 things: dignity of the individual as well as unity and integrity of the nation. So this is the preamble. It was adopted on 26th day of November 1949. Alright, by the people of India and give to ourselves. Now let's come to the fundamental rights. Just a second. Okay, so there are 6 fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. The first is a right to equality, a right to freedom of, let's say, movement, expression, etc. A right to equality means a right to equal status and opportunity. The right against any sort of exploitation by either the state, that means against any type of discrimination. The right to freedom of religion, the cultural and educational rights, and the right to constitutional remedies. Seeking any remedy via the constitution upon violation of any of these fundamental rights. Moving forward, what we see? The right to equality. So Article 14, equality before the law and equal protection of the laws. Article 15, prohibition of discrimination on base of religion, sex, caste, race, place of birth, etc. Article 16 is very important, equality of opportunity in public employment. Article 17 is abolition of untouchability. There was a movie also on this article, you can remember very easily. Article 18, abolition of titles except military and academic distinctions. The next one is right to freedom. Comprises Article 19 to 22. 19 is protection of certain rights regarding freedom of speech, assembly, association, movement, residence, and profession. Article 20 gives us the protection in respect for conviction for offences. Article 21, very important article, one of the most important article, protection of life and personal liberty. Article 21A, right to free and compulsory education, 6 to 14 years, and Article 22, protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. We move next towards right against exploitation, so prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, and Article 24, prohibition of child labor. We move to next fundamental rights, right to freedom of religion. Article 25, much in news, freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, freedom to manage religious affairs, freedom from payment of taxes for promoting any particular religion, and freedom from attending religious instruction or worship in certain educational institutions. 25, 26, 27, and 28. Further, we move on to the cultural and educational rights, which are via Article 29 as well as 30. So, protection of interests of minorities in India and rights of minorities to establish and administer certain educational institutions. The last one is a right to constitutional remedies. Article 32 sheds light on this constitutional remedies. So, right to move to the Supreme Court for enforcement of fundamental rights, also known as right to constitutional remedies. Any fundamental right must be violated in order to exercise this right. Moving further, let's come now to the DPSP, that is Directive Principle of the State Policy. So DPSP, that is Directive Principles of the State Policy. That means a directive principle to how state should function. Are the principles or guidelines mentioned in Part 4 of the Constitution. Please remember, fundamental rights are mentioned in Part 3. Directive Principles of State Policy of India have been adopted from the Irish Constitution. DPSP have come from Irish Constitution. So we have seen three things. One thing is that procedure established by law came from the British Constitution, while the due process of the law came by the USA's Constitution. DPSP came by the Irish Constitution. Okay. Influenced by the Irish national movement, especially Irish Home Rule movement. You could also read about the Indian Home Rule movement. Article 36 to 51 discuss various directive principles of the state policy. Directive principles of the state policy, unlike fundamental rights, are not enforceable in a court of law. That means they are just directive and not enforceable in courts. Moving further, DPSP are the principles or guidelines mentioned in Part 4 of the Constitution. This is just a repetition. Apologies for this. Let's move further. So DPSP strive to promote the social and economic welfare of the individuals by securing social order. So the primary purpose of DPSP is securing a social order. That means they work towards promoting the concepts of equality, liberty, and justice. So I hope you have heard these words in today's lecture itself in the preamble. Okay, we'll go back to the preamble and see how and where the fundamental rights, fundamental duties, and the DPSP find a place. All of these are only and only an extension of what has already been mentioned in the preamble. So Article 36 to 51 elucidate everything regarding the DPSP. The essence of DPSP is divided into 4 core principles. The first one is socialistic principles. So we had this word in our preamble that India will be a socialist state. So DPSP tell us that what kind of socialism is this? What kind of socialism is this? So socialistic principles are aimed at tackling complex social and economic issues and look to pave a model pathway towards a modern welfare state. So this kind of socialism is going to be there in India, and this is the objective of Indian socialism, to create a modern welfare state. So let's see some DPSP. So under Article 38, the aim is to secure a social order throughout the country by using tools of social, economic and political justice. So justice is here. First things. Second, in Article 39, aims to secure adequate means of livelihood for citizens by providing equitable material resources to everyone and striving for equal work pay for both men and women. So this is equality in the opportunity and status. Same as this, the core value of this article is to provide the right to work, a right to education, and right to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, and sickness. Coming to Article 42, this article guides the state to make provisions regarding just and humane working conditions for workers. Article 43, under this article, the state is guided. When we're talking about state, what is a state? A state is basically the government here. We're talking about the government. To give a decent living standard and social and cultural opportunities to workers. While Article 43A seeks to increase the participation of workers in various industries. You can use this in your mains answer writing, even when dealing with GS1. Article 47, in its efforts to further the cause of social justice, Article 47 talks about raising the level of nutrition and the standard of public health. Talking about all these are basically reflecting our preamble in some or the other way. Let me come back to the preamble. Okay, so we talked about all these things in the preamble. So we saw in DPSP these, just a second. Okay, so we saw in the DPSP that the socialistic principles are being focused upon. We'll further see where the democratic, republic, and secular principles we have already seen in the fundamental rights. Right. When we talk about the justice, we saw this in DPSP as well as a FR. The equality in status and opportunity we saw in the fundamental rights here. In the Article 16 we saw, alright. And we saw the equality before law in Article 14. We also see the liberty of belief, faith, worship, thought, movement in the Article 19 as well as Article 21 in the fundamental rights. You can basically say that preamble is a further, let's say all these things are further evolution of the preamble. Preamble is the basic idea of what India should be as a nation. And all these things, whether it is fundamental rights or DPSP or fundamental duties further, they are an evolution of how India should be as a country. Okay. So we talked about this. Let's us talk about Gandhian principles. So as per the Gandhian principles, the village panchayats have been touted as self-government authority under the article. So Gandhi's principle was of Antodaya, and that means that the Uday of even the last man of the end village. So this is why Gandhian principle mean that self-governance as well as a Panchayati Raj system also must help in the rise of the last man. Article 43 told us about promoting autonomous functioning and professional management of cooperative societies. Article 46, on the other hand, is dedicated to weaker sections of the society, and educational and economic interest of SC, ST and other weaker sections have been propagated under this article. The state has been guided to ensure that there is no social injustice and exploitation against the weaker sections. So these are Gandhian principles. The Article 47 tells us to prohibit the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs which are harmful for health, but it is not followed because, however, at many places it is followed, such as some are dry states of India. Many states are dry states, such as Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, etc. But in many states it's not followed because of the economic gains that liquor will get because of the high taxes on this. Alright. Article 48, slaughtering of cattle should be prohibited and work should be done for improving their breeds. So this is also prohibited in some parts of the country, but not all due to economic and political reasons. So these all are directive principles to the state policy. Alright. These all carry a should. And because of this should, they are not enforceable. Please remember. Last ones are liberal intellectual principles. They are in sense of creating a modern welfare state. So it should be modern also. So Article 14 tells us about the UCC, much in news this year especially. So the state will endeavor to secure a secure uniform civil code through the country of India. It's currently only in Goa. And soon it will be in Uttarakhand. And possibly soon, very soon in India. Article 45 can be seen with reference to Article 21A, right to education. Should provide early childhood care and education to children up they complete the age of 14 years. Article 48, agriculture and animal husbandry shall be organized on the scientific lines. 49, monuments, places and objects of historic and artistic importance should be protected. This is in work of ASI. Article 50 is about the separation of judiciary from the executive when it comes to public service of the state. And Article 51, international peace and security should be promoted. There should be an honorable relation between nations. So it's related to the IR. So it's making the country a republic, sovereign, as well as a global modern state and modern welfare state. All right. So these are the DPSP and fundamental rights. In the next lecture, we'll see the fundamental duties as well as solve the question. That what is the chief purpose of the constitution of any country. All right.